All-Around Joe podcast, where we optimize your human performance from my personal experience as an athlete, coach, and all-around self-improvement junkie. On this edition of the All-Around Joe podcast, I have a awesome interview coming up for you. It is with Eric Malzone of Fitness Blitz Radio, his podcast over on iTunes. Eric is a serial entrepreneur, a super cool dude. He even used to own his own CrossFit gym and has been a college athlete. So I highly recommend that you check out this podcast. We're going to be talking all about how to do it now and why you should be doing what you want now. So this is a really fun interview. I highly recommend that you check it out. But first, this podcast is brought to you by Audible. You can get yourself a free audiobook on us by going to allaroundjoe.com/audible. And in the podcast, Eric actually recommends the book called The One Thing by Gary Keller. So I recommend that you go to allaroundjoe.com/audible and pick up that book on us. So I hope you do that. And I hope you enjoy the podcast. So without further ado, here we go. Eric, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Joe, thanks for having me on the show, man. It's been a fun-packed morning for me. Let's see, today's June 13th, so I've already recorded a podcast, talked to a couple fitness professionals in the industry, taking their businesses online, and now I get to do a podcast with you. So this is it's all before noon, which is awesome.
That is super cool. And I've come and driven from Pinnacles National Park to a Starbucks so that we can be talking right now. So,
yeah.
It's good life, man. Good life.
Yeah, it is.
But it's just so that we can get to know you a little bit better. You know, what are you up to? What's your elevator pitch right now? So that people can get the background of Eric Malzone.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, I'm sure we'll get into the history of it, but I've been in the fitness industry for a long time, been a lifelong athlete. Now that I'm 41, I use that term loosely.
41?
Just 41. Yeah.
Wow. Looking good.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks, man. Yeah. Good living, hopefully. And what I do currently with my life is, similar to you, is my wife and I have taken our lives on the road. We've gone digital, nomadic. And, what I do now is I help people achieve the lifestyle of freedom that I so dearly love, whether that be through online businesses or just clarity in what they do. But mostly surviving, going through the world of online fitness, and whether that be coaching, membership sites, things like that, podcasts, whatever it is, help people do that. And that's, essentially monetizing my life journey is what I'm up to nowadays.
Very cool. And I'm interested, what's a regular week look like for you?
Oh, that's a great question. So, I am now currently really focusing everything on pushing my whole week into, starting Monday afternoon and finishing Friday morning. So what it looks like is I do a lot of my catch-up work on Monday afternoons, Friday mornings, closing out all my week. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I do podcasts and interviews all day. So I have what's called the Fitness Blitz, which is a short format, 8 to 12-minute podcast for Fitness Professional Online, which is my company with my business partner, Doug Holt. On Wednesdays, I do longer form interviews. I take interviews and I consult. And on Thursday mornings and Tuesday mornings, I do mastermind groups. So that's essentially it. It's a lot packed into 3.5 days of the week, but that's what I do. And then can I swear on this podcast? Is that okay? Or
absolutely.
Yeah. So on Friday afternoon through Monday morning, my wife and I just go fuck off somewhere in the in the wilderness and find different ways to have fun, and that's kind of it.
Very cool. And where are you right now?
I'm in Whitefish, Montana. Okay. Yeah, northwest Montana, about 2 hours south of the Canadian border, and we've been here since we got here in December, which is by far the longest time we've spent anywhere in the last year. But we came here for ski season, and we were not disappointed. We had I got 65 days of skiing in this year. It was the best season. We just happened upon the best season in 21 years in Whitefish. And everyone kept saying, you guys should stay for the spring, summer. So we did. And once again, not disappointed. This place is amazing. But actually, don't come here. Nobody come here. It's awful. Yeah. It's too gray. It's too cold. You won't like it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I used to tell people about Seattle. And then Amazon kept bringing people in, and now I had to get out of there. But man, I got to experience Whitefish, Montana for the first time this winter. Just randomly, we were searching for snow, and they were the only place that got a dump. So we headed, through the family in the car and drove over there, and it was fantastic. It was so cool.
Yeah, I think it was 430 inches we got this year. Whitefish got. And it's interesting. I know there's also, I think it's very popular from people in Seattle because there's that train, right? There's like the Whitefish train.
I didn't.
Yeah. So I guess you can hop on it at night and you can sleep on the train. Then you show up in the morning, you can ski that day.
Whoa.
Yeah. Pretty cool, right? Oh my God, that sounds like a great life experience.
Heck yeah. I'm going to have to let some of the people up in Seattle know about that. That sounds fantastic.
No, don't tell anyone else. Yeah.
Just like 3 people. They're really
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah.
That's it. So we'll edit this part out of the podcast. It'll be all good.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in knowing more about you, man. You seem like a cool guy, and we've only recently met and hit it off. I think it's been, I'm looking forward to getting to know you better. And this is one of the cool things about the podcast is get to dig in here. So I want to know, how did you grow up, man? I mean, where was it? What did that look like? Were there any interesting things that shaped who you are now?
Yeah, definitely. I grew up in Northern California. So, like I said, I'm 41. I was born in 1976. And when I was born in that area, it wasn't called the Silicon Valley yet. It was just, Northern California and the Bay Area. So what I can actually say is I remember when it was orchards and, that's, riding my bike around that area. And then all of a sudden, mid 80s, everything exploded. My dad he's all of his family, except for him, was born in Italy. So they all came over, and then his parents had him here in the States. And successful man, I lived in an upper middle class family. He was a dentist, put himself through school. Army paid for his dental school. Started practice in San Jose, and overall, I lived a pretty great upbringing. I have zero complaints about the way, I was brought up. And, I think some of the things that really defined who I am as far as personality and characteristics and things like that is, at early age, I had diagnosed with pretty gnarly asthma. So I had, was constantly having asthma attacks, trips to the hospital, things like that. Really scared my parents. My parents made me get into swimming because that builds your lung power and things like that. So I started doing it, hated it, just hated swimming. It was just I had to go, right? It was something that was my medicine. I had to go to swimming and ended up being okay at it and started competitively swimming at around, 5 or 6 and stuck with it. And, I was probably a major product of the low fat craze of the early 90s because I got pretty chubby, man. I got really chubby. I read around the age of 8 to 12 and having to squeeze into a Speedo at that age twice a day was really not that fun. So I had to really kind of, I became quite an introvert. I also had to get quite a good personality just to get by. And, once I got to about 11 or 12, from my athletic standpoint, I found water polo, which I was like, holy cow, this is swimming. This is way more fun, and then I really got hooked, and I had a very long and, rewarding career in water polo all the way through high school, All-American to college to club teams and some international club play after school. And so I've always done athletics. After I went to college in Boston and after that, I lived in San Francisco for a good 8 or 9 years. Had a blast. I did various forms of sales and marketing jobs, mainly because that was the only job I could really get. I wasn't really qualified for all else. I could just talk to people and go out and sell things. And, the whole time, just always seeing my dad, owning his own business. I knew that at some point, I didn't like working for people. I didn't like having to go to, an annual sales conference. I didn't like having to check in with my boss every Friday. I didn't like, I wanted to be, and I also saw, as from a sales perspective, how much money I was making for the company and how small of a fraction I actually got.
Yep.
I was like, somebody at the top of this pyramid is making a shit ton of money and it's not me. I got a trip to Hawaii this year, but I also sold like $3 million worth of stuff. And, so I decided, if I want to be in an organization, I want to be at the top of the pyramid, even if it's a tiny, tiny little pyramid. So, when one of my college teammates, Trevor Boehm, texted me in 2007, texting, it was right when this is back when cell phones, they didn't have like the current cell phones. So you had to go 333-444, when you wanted to text. And so he texted me, hey man, do you want to open a gym? And at that moment, in time, I was like, I was so ready for a change in my life. And I knew that, it's getting up to my upper 20s. And I was like, I gotta start doing something that's like serious. I've been messing around, having a great time in San Francisco, but I haven't really built anything for myself and my future self. So, man, I literally made a decision, packed up everything I owned in San Francisco, put it into a trailer and drove down to Santa Barbara because we decided that, after a little bit of research that Santa Barbara, and this was the wild, wild west days of CrossFit. So,
Yep.
Affiliates were popping up. People were just claiming their stakes, claiming their ground in different areas. So we did research. I wanted to live in Lake Tahoe, but there was already 2 gyms there. And then, so we looked at Santa Barbara, which was Trevor's number one choice. And we decided, let's just do it. Let's go there. So we went to a town I've never been in, didn't know a single person. And we opened a gym and that kind of pushed forward. So that was about 9 years of my life. And
what year was that?
That was 20. So we started the business. You started the articles of incorporation in 08, open in 09.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was still pretty early.
Yeah.
It was still, and that was one of the worst. That recession was awful. I don't know if you remember, but that was a really bad time to open a business. Luckily CrossFit was just starting to get going. Right. It was a bad time. We couldn't get any business loans. We had to self-finance everything, which means everything looked like shit. Like our gym, we did all the renovations, which was just tearing out the roof and everything by ourselves, hoping that no one would come by asking for permits. Because that would have been it. It would have been dead before it even started. Right. It would have been, cause we couldn't afford permits. So, and then we just started hustling, going around, talking to as many people as we could in Santa Barbara face to face, telling them that we exist, getting one client. One client was a win, 2 clients was amazing, and then you just start building from there. And the whole thing, started to steamroll. And by the time I was ready to, trying to think, like right around 2014 was probably like the pinnacle, I think, of CrossFit, when you could still have the name on the door and people start coming in.
Yeah.
Maybe a little earlier. I'm sure you remember all this, but that started to die off. And that's when people had to start getting good at business. And that's where I really started to grow as a business person, because I had to figure it all out, because there was no set way to do it. So, it continued to grow, the year that, and then finally I came home. Well, let me back up, because there's a lot of personal parts that come into this. In 2016, my wife and I had a very challenging year personally. It started off with, we were pregnant and then we weren't, and we lost pregnancy very late, about 20 weeks. And that was devastating, absolutely devastating. And then within a month or 2, my wife's father died of heart attack in Brazil at the age of 62. Oh. And so she had to fly out and go take care of that. And then on top of that, right towards the end of the year, our dog died. And we're just like, it was one of those things where you just realize the fragility of life. And, I'm similar, probably what you're doing. We decided from that point that, everything that you want to do in life, like just start doing it, because it's so easy to get stuck in these ruts, and then years go by, decades go by. Next thing you know, everything that you wanted to do, either you're not healthy enough to do it or you can't do it anymore. So really, with a lot of that thought in mind and just the stress that I was going under, like wasn't the same Eric I used to be, that really defined and changed me quite a bit. And I decided that, it's time for us to leave that town. And I came home one night and told my wife, I want to sell the gym and I think we should go move to a mountain town. And, and just like my wife, she wanted out me. She's like, well, why don't we she's like, first of all, yes, I love it that you want to sell a gym because she can work from anywhere. And she knew how much time I put in. I mean, 6 days a week minimum, right? Being there. And she was all for it. And then she's like, well, why don't we just live in multiple mountain towns? And I was like, God, I love you. You're the best. Yeah, let's do it. So, I worked with my head coach to sell the gym. She bought it. Deanie Russell is still doing a fantastic job with Gravitas Fitness. And we hit the road, man. I started right around that point. I also reached out to my now business partner, Doug Holt, because I know that he had sold a facility in Santa Barbara, a private training studio after 12 years. He owned it. He also had a digital marketing agency, which he'd been in that world for 20 years. Also used to write textbooks for ISSA. So he's had this entrepreneurial background. So I reached out to him. And when I called him to get his advice on, what to do next, he was actually driving from California to Alaska in a van just like yours. Yeah. And he was working the whole way. He was working 3 days a week. And I was like, dude, that's it. That's what I want. I want that. Yeah. So let's talk about that. And we did. So when he got back, we had lunch and we started cracking some ideas of like, okay, we splintered off his digital agency, started doing work for people in the fitness industry, started doing some consulting. And, now we're working on mastermind groups and I have my 2 podcasts and all that. So it's been a really busy, fun year since I made that decision to move on from that spot. And I feel like, whether looking back, I was really ready to grow outside of my 4 walls of my gym and take a more global perspective. And, now, doing what we do now and how happy we are. I feel bad sometimes, Joe. People are like, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing great. Like, I don't know why I feel guilty for saying that, but I feel like things are really good. Like life's awesome, and, I don't know. I couldn't have always said that with 100%, authenticity, but I can now. And, I want more people to get that. I want more people to get that message of like, if there's things you're waiting to do, or you think you're going to do them when you're 60 or 65, fuck it. Like figure out a way to do it now. Why not? Because you're young, you can enjoy it. So anyway, that's my story.
I love it. I want to dig in just a little bit further. Number one question: what did you get? Did you graduate from college, and what did you get your degree in? If you did,
yeah, I did. I graduated from Boston College. So I originally, which was a great school, very fun, small, private Jesuit Catholic school. So I actually did 18 years of Catholic school. Man, hard time. Yeah, I did hard time. So I originally started in economics, and then I realized that was like way too hard. Especially doing 2 sports. I was swimming, playing water polo, I was traveling all the time. I just couldn't keep up with that. So I switched to business marketing, which I actually loved, and graduated with that degree, and actually use it, which is rare. Actually use stuff that I learned in college. Right? It. Crazy.
You don't hear that very often.
Yeah. Right.
And then before that, you mentioned that you were an introvert growing up.
Yeah.
So I was as well. So I'm curious how and when that switched, because you're obviously, maybe you're still an introvert. I'm still an introvert, but I have, I can turn it on and off. You know what I mean? So that I can, help people in the fitness industry or do presentations and whatnot. So I'm curious, where did that transformation happen? Why did it happen? And then how do you deal with it now?
Yeah. Well, I think, when I look back and when I was introverted, I think of myself as like, a chubby little kid playing Nintendo, Legend of Zelda, just jamming Oreos. Right. And that was like my life. And that's what I was super happy doing. And I'm very happy. And when I think of like introvert, I don't know who told me this or where I read it, but where I gather this data or information is that, it's where do you go to recharge? Do you go off by yourself? Or do you go, hang out with people and that's where you gather your energy from? I'm very much the first. Like I can do, similar to you, I can do 20 podcasts and a mastermind group and do a presentation and all these things. But as soon as that's done, I'm like, whew, okay, I need to go off in the wilderness and just hang out with my dog and my wife and go from there, And so I think I don't think there was ever a shift. I also, it's a funny story is in 8th grade, we had yearbooks, right? and everyone got an award. So I got 2 awards, which was, I think I was the only person who got 2, which is kind of cool. I got I got best personality, which I believe is what they give the nice chubby kid generally. And then number 2, I got best dressed, which is funny because we wore uniforms. So
apparently you wore your uniform really well.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Maybe it was the turtleneck underneath. I don't know. But yeah, I think I've always, I've always retreated back to being, by myself and enjoying those times, but I can always push forward. I think my brother's the same way as, we call it social introverts, where you can push it when you need it.
Yeah.
And I think it sounds like you're probably pretty similar too.
Yeah. I hit a point where I just knew that if I wanted to excel, I needed to break out of that a little bit. And all the people that I was looking up to were doing things like presentations and, speaking to big groups. And so let's just throw yourself into the fire and figure out what happens. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. For sure.
Yeah. So let's see. Have you ever had any mentors?
Yeah. Yeah, I have. I've always had mentors. I put a really, really high value on it. I would say my dad, number one, has always been a great mentor, whether it be business or life or whatever. He's always been there, always a phone call away. Through business, I would say one of my first mentors was Andy Petronic. He was the guy from CrossFit Los Angeles. He owned that and started the Biz Network. And we hired him, Traver and I, as a business consultant early on. And I still talk to him. He was on my podcast, and I email with him quite frequently. And he was awesome. I think probably the most influential mentor I've had, just on my whole perspective on life and business and everything. Life, things after life even, is James Fitzgerald, who, from the OPEX, he's the founder of OPEX, used to be OPT. He was the first 2007 CrossFit Games champion. And I hired him as my coach for CrossFit, or just athletics in general. And what I didn't realize is that, not only was I getting someone who had mastered program design, but I was getting someone who really, really had unique insights on life and how business and everything ties in, and life coaching, really. So, I'm very thankful for him. He's still, he's a very busy man, but he still makes time. If I email him, I'll ask him every once in a while, can we jump on a call? And he'll still do it. So he's been awesome. I worked with Chris Cooper from the Two Brain Business Group for a long time, 2 or 3 years. Awesome dude, great guy, very insightful in business. And once again, everyone who's a great mentor just tends to be a good person, I've found. Yeah. And then now, I kind of go back and forth. I consider my business partner, Doug, he's a mentor for sure, because he's so far ahead in the online business and digital marketing world. And we both have similar visions of what we want our lives to look like. So yeah, I've always had mentors, man. And I'm kind of, worked with Cliff Ravenscraft for a while. I was a big podcast guy. So, yeah, I don't do well without him. That's for sure.
Well, I think that a lot of people have actually trouble finding mentors.
Mm-hmm.
You've had several awesome mentors. How did you go about finding those people?
Yeah, I think I always look at, I try to find people who are a few steps ahead of me of where I want to be, right? And then I'd go and I just pursue it. I was very, with James Fitzgerald, I was very open and honest. When I hired him as a coach, I'm like, listen, I'm kind of hiring you for a coach, but let's be honest, I'm a slightly above average athlete when it comes to CrossFit. So it's not really for that. I just want to learn as much as I can about business and life and program design, all these things. So he was very accommodating on that. But yeah, and same with Chris Cooper. I saw him, I read his book, The Two Brain Business, and, he resonated with me, and I emailed him and, told him what kind of relationship I wanted, and we crafted that. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's just a point of resonating with people and seeing where they're at in the life. And if they, if they're steps ahead of where you want to be on that same or similar path, I think that's probably the biggest marker of going for it.
Okay. And then you recommend reaching out to them, and even if they are not currently having a quote unquote mentorship program, you just craft it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, kind of. I mean, I did it within like with James Fitzgerald, I crafted it within the parameters of like, okay, we had one call a month, we had unlimited email. So I built it within those parameters because, you have to value their time, of course, and they're going to set their markers as well. But I think, anytime, sorry, mosquito just went by my face. Anytime that people reach out to you and ask you to mentor them, I think there's a natural urge to say yes. I think people want, whether it's from a legacy standpoint or something, you want to take what you've taught or learned and all the fuck ups that you've gotten and pass that down to the next people. And I'm lucky now because I get to do that for others, whether it be one-on-one or mastermind groups. And that's the biggest thing is, it's not necessarily what but or what the success is. It's the fuck ups,
right?
That that's where you learn. And I think I'm really good at screwing up. So I do it really fast and I do it really effectively. And then I can pass that down to other people. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It does. But, and I think that people listening should take this and run with it. Really. I mean, if you want to improve on anything, this is like maybe like one of the top 3 strategies that's ever been talked about on this podcast is, if not the best, is, hey, find that person that's a little bit above you that you look up to, contact them and see if you can create this relationship and let them know what you're looking for. Even if they don't have a program set up already. I think a lot of people would think, oh, well, they're not, mentoring people or they don't have a coaching program set up. It's like, so?
Right. Yeah. Ask. Because you never know, right? Just ask. And I think when you look at like why mentors are important or who's a good mentor for you, I think a lot of people want to go to the top of the mountain, someone who's been there for 20 years. But really, generally the best advice comes from people who are just there not too long ago.
Sure.
Who know that feeling or know that's like if you're, using, CrossFit, if you're one of those people who, like my wife, who just picked up keeping pull-ups like that, right? Like it was just so annoying. You're like, God, that took me 6 months. But generally the people who are the best coaches or the best mentors are ones who are recently learned not too long ago and struggle to learn it.
Yep.
Because they know that feeling of like, yeah, I get it. I can be empathetic in that situation, but just keep going, tweak it, try again, tweak it, try again. And I think that's, a lot of times people want to go to like, I'm trying to think of like, someone who's like a master gymnast, who's been doing it forever and they just find it so easy. They may not understand the struggle of what a beginner goes through. Sure. So I think people who are right in that, that sweet spot of maybe a couple of years or a couple steps ahead of you is really important. That's my opinion.
No, I agree too. And I've started this other podcast called the Get Better Project where I'm interviewing top athletes, and a lot of them are CrossFit athletes. And I'm more interested in those people that have just made it to regionals for the first or second time, or just made it to the games, because they seem to have, it's interesting. Like you can get that point at when they flip a switch and like, this is what I did, this is what I changed, or this is what it took. It took the 4 years of getting good at this particular thing in order to make it, rather than like let's say the Rich Fronings or the Matt Frasers who are just, they did it, they started doing it and they're good at it from the start,
Right.
And they've been doing it for such a long time that it's kind of like they don't know what that difference maker is, I don't think, or it's harder to get it out of them.
Yeah, I totally agree. And plus, if you're going to go hire a Rich Froning, you're going to pay a lot more.
Yeah.
Right. Like if he's going to coach you, it's going to be like $10,000 a month or something like that. And so it's generally more affordable if you go someone in the middle tier who's been there recently, for sure.
Absolutely. So we've talked about how you start off in sales and you got into entrepreneurship. Was that an easy transition for you? I know a lot of people find, because we're talking about, how people should be doing things now and how they should, and we're going to get more and more into that as the podcast goes along. But a lot of people think, well, my job is holding me back, and maybe they should become entrepreneurs, or maybe they should figure out how to take their job on the road. Like both of our significant others sounds like to take their job on the road.
Yeah.
So was that entrepreneurship transition hard for you, or did it come easy?
I've always, I like to have a mixture of what I call burning your boats, which is all in, right? Which is, I don't know, it's like some Spanish conquistador came over to a new land. And as soon as he arrived, he burned all the boats so that everyone in his crew was like, okay, well, you're in now, right? You're committed, right? So it's called burning the boats. But I also like to have some kind of background or buffer so that I don't overstress myself, because that can be a very, very stressful situation.
Sure.
Like when I first started, when I took that leap and drove all the way down to Santa Barbara to open my gym, I also had another sales job that I was still doing remotely. Okay. Now I wasn't doing it as well. I knew I only had a certain amount of time before they kind of caught on and sorry, Matt, he was my sales manager. If you're listening to this, I apologize, but kind of used the company a little bit, just to get that income going. I also had X amount of dollars saved so that I know I'm like, if I needed to, I could live for a year. Right. So I think there's a certain, degree of walking the fence of like, okay, I need a high sense of urgency, but I also need something that I can fall back on, because it's not going to go as you planned. It never goes as you think it's going to go. If you think it's going to take a year to build your business, plan on 2, because that's just the way it is. And, so having that little bit of buffer really helps, and it takes that stress off, because I think there has to be always in entrepreneurship, there has to be a balance between urgency, which is what makes you get shit done, because without structure, a lot of people would just not do anything, right? So you need some kind of urgency, but also you need patience. So you need to know that like, hey, you're going to screw up and that's okay. You just need time to recover, figure it out, try again. So it's like that constant walking the line between urgency and patience, which really I think is the core competency of entrepreneurship, is being able to do that and not giving up. So when I look at like, when I open a gym, in that particular business, I think there's 2 types of people. I think there's people who gravitate towards the training side of things, right? Really good coaches. And then there's people who gravitate towards the business side of things. I was the latter. I gravitated towards the business side of things. And that's one of the reasons that Traver went to me, because he knew I had that type of interest and mind for that type of work. So I also had a sales background, which, man, I tell you, that's fucking huge. Like being able to communicate, sell, understanding the numbers game that goes behind sales. That's huge. And I actually like sales. One of my Cliff Ravenscraft, one of my mentors, describes it as shared enthusiasm. Sure. If you can share your enthusiasm for a service or product with someone, then they're likely to buy, if they have that enthusiasm as well. And if you have that skill set, which is developed over time, and the empathy and the able to listen, then that goes a long way. So I get excited about entrepreneurship, and even I sometimes I don't like using that word because it's such a hot topic right now. Everybody, it's like a rock star term. Really, I just call it like business ownership, or being, in business for yourself. I like it. And right now, first 6 months of my current things, we didn't make a lot of money, and my wife, does well. So I had that buffer, but, I hate the fact that, and I love her to death because, she never puts it in my face, but I hate the fact that I have to, that I had to go back and be like, hey, I really want to buy these new pair of hiking boots. Do you mind if I, she's like, yeah, of course, buy whatever you want. I'm like, yeah, but I hate asking, Yep. I want to and we had money, that's the thing is we sold a gym, we had money in the bank. We just didn't want to touch it. Sure. Because eventually we want to buy a property. So we just forgot it was there. But, I think, it should be a little scary. I think getting into business for yourself, whether entrepreneurship or whatever it is. But I also think that there's a lot of ways I would ask people why you want to get into it, because it's not that easy. I think if a lot of people think, well, I'll have freedom, of lifestyle, which could be true or could not be true. You can find a lot of people start businesses who become slaves to their business. And, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there. Like, I talk about James Fitzgerald and OPEX, they have coaches who work 3-4 days a week, travel the world, and they're not entrepreneurs, they're contractors. Right. And they have everything. They don't have to worry about the marketing. They don't have to worry about the accounting, right? They just coach. So I think, I would ask people, why are you doing this? Why do you want to be an entrepreneur? And be very clear on why, because maybe there's other things that you can do that are less risky, less stressful, that get you exactly what you want to get.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there are a lot of jobs that allow people the flexibility of, location independence, or, setting your own schedule, whatever it may be. I mean, in fact, the truth of the matter is that you or I probably have availability sometimes to hire people that are, looking for jobs like that. So yeah, if anybody's interested, shoot me an email. Yeah. Is there anything like, what do you love versus, I don't think hate is the right word, but what is the hardest part about entrepreneurship versus the most rewarding part about entrepreneurship for you?
Yeah. I think the downside to entrepreneurship, I'll just call it downside for lack of a better term, but, your business becomes your life.
Mm-hmm.
It very much is, the lines get blurred if they're not completely merged. So you tend to value yourself by your business, or at least I do. And I think, and I'm not alone. So you tend to value what you do, your numbers or what people think of you, by your business. And that tends to start to define you over time. I think the mindset of an entrepreneur is freaking rough at times. It's just rough because you could put out what you think is the best service or best product, and people will shit on it or they cancel. And you're like, God, now what? I'm worthless. You got to be able to pick yourself up, learn from that situation and keep going.
Yeah.
It's just, God, I can't remember who this quote is, but success is going from failure to failure without a loss of enthusiasm. That in essence is entrepreneurship, because you're just going to fail a lot. Right. And I think that's the downside. You just have to get used to it, and understand that that's just the game. And for every 8 failures, you'll have a success. And that gets me into the good point of like, that one success is so freaking intoxicating and awesome because you did it. You're like, oh, I finally figured it out, man. I cracked this code. Like, this is it. Now I can just go full bore. And that's like, we're at the point with a couple of service offerings now that we're doing now. We're like, okay, I think we finally, after 8 months of like mixing service offerings and trying and, burning some social capital and doing things like that, like, okay, I think we got it. Now we're going to freaking unleash it on the world, and it's going to be awesome. Because we know it works, but that took so much pain to get there, and so much anguish and nights of waking up at 3 a.m. So there's this mental game. And I don't think people talk about depression, anxiety enough when it comes into entrepreneurship. I think it's, it's that, like I said, it's that rock star thing. It's the Gary Vee thing, although he talks about it pretty honestly. But, I think everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Everyone wants to be an online entrepreneur. But dude, there's like some down times, like, especially if you're off by yourself in the middle of the mountains or wherever, like you got a lot of time to think, and, especially if you have people that you need to get paid, it's tough, being from a gym ownership standpoint. I had a big nut to crack every month. It was, we operated at a high capacity. There's a lot of dollars running through there every month, a lot of expenses. And, I was an employer. I employed people. And, that's never would I thought, Eric at 15 would have thought Eric at 40 wasn't employing people. But I was, and that'll keep you up at night. You lose 10, 20 clients in a month. Fuck, that sucks, and you just got to be able to deal with it and keep going. And mindfulness, I think, is a big part of it. So there's, I think that the ups and downs are tied together because the downs can be so low at times, but the highs are so good and so worth it, Sure. And you just got to find the balance.
Yeah. And I think that, do you agree with this? Is it like, as the lows happen or you try things and they don't work, it gets the emotional downs, at least for me, get less down. It's kind of like, like you said, you're going 1 out of 8 you're shooting for. Man, my first 1 out of 8 was like, oh geez, I don't know if I can do this. Like every downer was super down. And then it's like, now that I'm on my, who knows how many 800th or whatever.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, well, let's try the next one,
Yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. I think so. I think you nailed it because, at first, like, especially starting my second or third business now, I'm on my third, and you know what to expect, which is a good and a bad thing. You know that it's going to suck at times, but you also know that you'll live, and, you just kind of keep pushing through. So yeah, I think it does. If you look at like a frequency, it's kind of like before it was like this, and now it's kind of like this, right? And now it's not so bad. People are just listening. Sorry, you couldn't see that.
Yeah, sorry. But at the same time too, for those people that are, maybe struggling with their fitness or like trying to get themselves into awesome shape, if you're listening to this, it's the same kind of thing where it's like the gym was, you got really sore and it was really hard. You had these big ups and downs for the first month or so, and then the more you do it, the more that you're looking actually for those ups and downs. Like I did a really hard workout the other day and I was telling my girlfriend, I'm like, I'm not sore at all, but I should be. Like, I want that because it tells me that there's something happening, and if it was my first month, I'd probably be all downer because I couldn't move out of my seat, So,
yeah, exactly.
So business, great analogy. Life, working out, just kind of keep with it because those ups and downs kind of level themselves out.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Since this is a health and fitness podcast, I just threw this one question in there so that people could steal some things from you. Are there any fitness or nutrition truths that you live by?
Yeah. There is stay away from dogma. I think that's the number one. There's so many different ways. And, I really nerd out on like the future and technology of fitness and where it's all going and all the data that we can access and understanding like, our genetic profiles and wearables and all of those things. And what it's really telling us is that more and more as we go down this path that fitness and health and nutrition is so individual, right? That understanding the way you react to different training that, paleo may be good for someone, but, it's dogmatic. Anything that's dogmatic, like, paleo or veganism or anything like that, I would say steer away because that's just not the way the world works. And, if you come across a coach or you're coaching people and people ask you questions, if your default answer isn't, well, it depends.
Sure.
Then you don't know enough to know that you don't know shit. Because that's, that's the journey of a coach or people getting into health and fitness is that, and that's, I've had the pleasure, just as I'm sure you have, talking to really, really high level coaches. And that's always the answer. I would ask James Fitzgerald questions and, he would do like this whole like, oh God, just this whole, and everybody makes fun of him because he was just like this stressed out, like, because you ask him a simple question, but he's got like 30 million possibilities rolling around in his head because he knows so much, he's been doing it, applying it for so long. And he's probably, I just imagine it's like the Matrix, right? Just like, just like information downloading. So then he asked you like 10 more questions to try to get clarifying going from there. So I think, and it's interesting how, my health and fitness has evolved over the years too. I'm very much at the point now, I'm 41 where, I don't need a whole lot to stay feeling good. I used to be, I was doing, for a while I was shooting for regionals, right? And I was old, I was 30, 37 shooting for regionals, competing against people in their 20s and really, had no business doing it, but I thought maybe I could do it. So anyway, the training was brutal. Right. It was hard. And it was very much an open conversation with me and my coach, like, listen, this isn't healthy for you. Just understand you're not doing this for health. Right. So as long as we understand that clearly, then we'll move forward. And, now, and that was like double days, 8, 9, 10 workouts a week and everything hurt, adrenal fatigue, digestive issues, all of that stuff that goes along. And then now I'm realizing what I truly value. And I think that takes time of like, what do I value? Well, I value going on a long bike ride on a Saturday through, Glacier National Park with my wife. And that's what I train for now. So what does my week look like? Just nailing down my nutrition, right? Getting as much nutrition and value as I can during my days. Sleeping, really good sleep. I got a Whoop wearable. I don't know if you know those are, but it's now monitoring my sleep and it's basically dictating my life. Yes. So cool. And then, and my workouts are like, either aerobic and long or, short 30 to 40 minute resistance workouts that I do playing outside with a kettlebell in the sun. And, that's what I like to do. And it keeps me healthy and I sleep well. And I think you just got to realize what you're doing and coaches, as you're going through this, realize that your interpretation of fitness and the lens in which you look through it and see it is not the same as your clients, and getting that empathy and understanding where people are coming from. And really it comes down to life coaching. And I know that term is hot, but it's just true. It's just being able to understand people's values and that they're not the same as your own, and being able to help them through that. So I could go off on health and nutrition and fitness all day, because it's still a huge part of my life. I just don't do it directly. I indirectly help people do it.
Sure. And I think that what people could take away from this goes back to what we talked about earlier too, is that there's not really a right answer for everybody. So if you want to get better at your health and fitness, find a mentor or find a gym to go to that you can have a mentor, right? Because then the people that have that exact answer, I love it that you said when they're like, it depends, what's the best diet for you? It's like, let's talk more, because take a while. And the person that says it's paleo or it's keto or whatever, they don't have enough information. So it is, maybe it isn't. And, why is your squat supposed to look like that? Or why is your squat supposed to look like this? So go find yourself a mentor and try and get better at learning what they know and moving forward with it. So that was awesome. Love that.
Cool.
I'm going to need to take that clip out of the podcast and use it for advertising purposes. It was so
awesome.
It was so good.
Good, man. Yeah.
But let's transition to this do it now stuff. I know that that was the number one passion that you talked about wanting to go over. So let's dig in. Why are you passionate about that, and why is it relevant to you, and why should people care? And we've touched on it a little bit, but let's really dig into that one.
Yeah. So, I mentioned 2016, how it was a difficult year for my wife and I, and that was, it changed me fundamentally, like at the core in my chemistry. It really changed who I am, in so many ways. And, why I think when you asked me that question, I also was just getting back. I lost a good friend this year. He was 48. And his name is Justin Friesner, and I've known him for a long time. He's been friends with my brother for over 25 years, and just known him for a long time. He was the first member of my gym in Santa Barbara. Just an all-around good dude. And he was 48, had what we believe was a massive heart attack in Cancun when he was swimming with his girlfriend, who was, in all intents and purposes, his life partner. Like, they had just put money down on a home. They were starting to build their life together, and just within. Gone, right? Done. And, when we went to the memorial, and my brother and I led, this beautiful paddle out service. And, during the ceremony right before the paddle out, there's a JJ, who's his girlfriend and my close friend as well. Her family member got up and talked about crossroads. And he's like, I think what this reflects on is that we're all at a crossroads, at this point, because this reminder and loss of Justin is basically a reminder that, life is incredibly fragile, and you got to take a really good look at what you're doing with your life. And is it what you want to be doing? Because we live in this, Di Manuel, another guy we both know really well. I talked to him on a podcast, and, we talked about this book, which I just ordered, should be here today. It's called The Five Regrets of the Dying. Right. And it's like all these people that were interviewed, at the later stages of life, and what regrets they had. And there's these 5 primary ones. I don't know them well enough yet, but I understand the point is that so many people get to their lives and they're like, well, when I'm 60, I'll buy a van and I'll go cruise around all the national parks. Right. Or, or I'll go live overseas, or I'll do these things, or I'm, whatever it is, we always put off these things for a future now. And that future now is by far not guaranteed. I get reminders of that all the time. My brother almost died in 2014. Just had a brain aneurysm, very healthy guy. Almost lost him, trauma unit for weeks on end, and had to get brain surgery. And it was just so sudden, right? And I keep coming across these stories, 14, 16, 18, seems to be happening every 2 years now. Something major happens where we're just shocked. Like, how could that person go? Yeah. And, I think you have to really take a good look at your life and say, what am I waiting for? And, all these excuses that we come up with, some people may look at my life and, say, well, that's Eric, it's easy for you to say because you had a business that you could sell and you don't have kids, so you can go off and do these things. Well, you talk to someone like Di Manuel, he's got 2 kids, right? He just moved them all to Bali. because that's what he wants to do with his life. And that's things that they have that they want to check off the list and, start doing it now. And I just think if you really boil it down, Joe, if you just boil it down to what it all is, it's just a matter of choices and what you do. Yeah, okay, maybe I have to pull my kids out of school if I want to do some things. It's a choice, and what it comes down to is I think for most people, if that vision of what you want with your life, whatever it is, if you can just make that first major decision. For me, it was coming home one night and just telling my wife, and shocking her, like, hey, I want to sell my gym. That was my identity, dude. I went and walked around Santa Barbara. Everybody, I knew people everywhere. I had this massive loving community. People thought I was crazy. From all outside perspectives, I was successful, right? I had a successful business in a the most beautiful part of the country, and owned multiple homes, and like everything was just like perfect, but not me. It wasn't me. It wasn't what I wanted. And I think what we also end up doing is living up to other people's ideals. Like, okay, this is what society tells us is right. By, like I said, by all factors, I was winning, but it wasn't what Eric wanted. What I want something super simple. I want a van, right? That I can go travel around, and I just want to cruise and see things and explore and have time to my own to think and philosophize and do all that. That's what I want. Sure. And, they say as wisdom is just clarity and what you really enjoy. And I think that's the big thing. So I would just encourage people, if you're listening right now, take a hard look, like a fucking hard look at what you're doing, because I guarantee if you stay when whatever you're doing, it's easy for a decade to go by. Yeah. Easy. And as someone who's like early 20s, like a decade, that's forever. Trust me, shit goes by fast. Like I owned a gym for 9 years. It went like that. And so just get to it and just make that first tough move. For me, it was just saying verbally to my wife that I want to sell my gym and I want to go live somewhere else. And after that, everything starts cascading and working in your favor, and the universe starts coming behind you and making it happen. So yeah, man, it's, hopefully it doesn't take a shocking moment of a loss or whatever that thing is, that happens to people that kind of forever changes you. But sometimes that's what it takes. And then you just get out and you start doing life on your terms,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can look at it two different ways. I think that there's the lost way, or there's the thought of like, think about whatever you believe in, right? Whether it's have you religious beliefs or non-religious beliefs or whatever. But life is so fragile, and for me, I let it scare me sometimes. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what happens next. I can, believe some Bible or something like that, but I don't know, like, I can't talk to those people that have gone, so I don't know. So I get a little scared, and I'm like, well, shit, if I get hit by the bus tomorrow and I haven't gone down the road of doing things that I want, what was I thinking, And then the other thing is, like, I don't know about you, but I always looked at how people worked their whole life or their best years of their life, and then they go off and retire and do stuff. And for my whole life, I've always looked at that and thought, that doesn't make sense to me. Like,
it makes no sense, Joe.
I can't get it.
It doesn't make sense. And no one knows why that's the way things are. Especially nowadays, I can see why at certain times, like, okay, you go to school, you start with a company, you work for that company for 30, 40 years, you build your pension, you retire. That's just the way things were. There were no other options, right? We have as many options as we want now. We can build online businesses. We can live from anywhere. And, it's crazy to me. And I think if there's two things people can contemplate on a daily basis that hopefully will motivate them is, number one, your own death, right? Contemplate your own mortality, because it's fucking coming. It's the one thing that's guaranteed, right? Me, I'm 41. I'm statistically halfway there. That was a big thing. I was like, holy, like, talk about, like, midlife crisis is a real thing, right? Number one, mortality. Number two, realize, like, how small and insignificant you are in the universe. Like, it doesn't really matter. I mean, Joe Rogan, I'm sure you listen to his podcast, right? Yeah. He has a say, he's like, at the end of the day, we're just talking, walking monkeys flying around on an organic spaceship. And that's it. Like, we're not, like, we think that what we do is so important, but it's really like, we don't even know how big the universe is. If you look at statistics, like I have, God, what is it? this book about the cosmos that I just keep, in my office. And I read a couple books in there every once in a while when I'm doing my job. And it just reminds me. I'll just pick it up. I'll read one page. I'm like, God, I'm so small. I'm so tiny. It doesn't matter. Like all these things I think that matter. What my retirement fund looks like, what this looks like. It doesn't matter. So might as well just go out and start doing shit that you want to do, because we're going to die. We're all going to die, and we're all completely small and insignificant in the grand scheme of things. So stop thinking you're so goddamn grand and just get on with what you want to do, and I know that sounds dark in some ways, but it's not. It's actually extremely liberating,
Yeah. If it motivates you, then get after it. I know that like my brother's always had an incredible like perspective on life. And I was always the person that would worry about things and finances and whatnot. And, should I buy the next whatever? And he's like, look, dude, this is how I live my life. If it's going to increase my experience of life, like I'm going to have an enjoyable experience, and it's not going to put me in debt, that I can't, climb myself out of. And I'm not advocating people getting themselves into debt or anything like that. Yeah. But if it's going to increase your experience and it's not going to harm you in any way, that's an easy decision. Do it. Increase your experience, have a better experience, because then you're going to have that memory and you start living your life based off of having quality experiences and not just like following what other people think you should be doing. And he probably told me that. He's my younger brother. He probably told me that, 10 years ago. And even to this day, I still think about that, like, shoot, if I go buy those, even if it's like a buy thing or go to a national park or whatever, it's going to increase my experience. Yeah, it cost me $23 to camp there, but my experience was fucking awesome. It was great.
Yeah, man, it's spot on. And I totally agree. It actually took me a long time. And I think you're right. I think we have to be practical and real that you have to have the finances. You have to have that set, right? You have to have some kind of awareness and plan when it comes to your finances. But you're right, man. Like, you could have, a bunch of money saved, but for some reason we don't even want to touch it. Right. Yeah. But, we go through this all the time. We have like, we're about to purchase a base fan because we're going to build it out just like you. And we just went through, we're like, God, do we need it? But we have this. And I'm like, yeah, but think about how better our weekends would be every weekend if we just picked up on a Friday and just drove and just went somewhere and parked on, and just saw shit and met people and, had experiences, built stories and things like that. And I agree. For some reason we always want to hold on to these things. And then next thing you know, like I said, a decade goes by like that. And you just be like, I wish I did it. And that's, a life with as little regrets as possible, I think is the greatest goal you can have.
Absolutely. I'm not sure if you guys can hear it, but a motorcycle crew just decided to park right next to my van. So if that's coming through on the podcast, that's the downside of, I guess, driving around and trying to do a podcast. But it's awesome.
Yeah.
So
it's like
some sort of a Harley group out there.
Yeah, I can't hear it on my end. So
good.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Awesome. Well, I guess we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but let's put some things in like concrete forms. Like if somebody needs to do this and they need to analyze their life, do you have any tactics for that? Like, sit down for 2 hours and write out everything that you ever wanted, create a list of all the things that you want to do, a bucket list, if you will, do a weekly review of what things you liked or didn't like. Do you have anything that people could take away right now and put into their schedule? I'm a big scheduler, like put it in your calendar so that you're actually going to do it and then take some action on it. Any things like or ideas like that you could give somebody?
Yeah. I don't have anything quite like that, but I do have a more, with every consulting client I start with, and I've borrowed a lot of these ideas and pieced them together into, I used to do what's called the perfect day, which I got from Chris Cooper, but now I do the perfect week because, and what I say by the perfect week is what is that mixture of like, recreation, impact, health, sleep and rest and love and all those things that you have, and build out that perfect week and what it looks like. And the most important thing is with that perfect week, make sure it's not stealing from weeks of the future. So you're not debting yourself to get it, so it's sustainable. and that you can continue to repeat over and over again, and then singularly focus on that and what it takes to get there, and don't stop. And because once you get there, it's amazing. I'm basically there, like I basically did it. I have to sustain it now.
Right.
But I can tell you the process of getting there is almost more fun than being there, because it's so goddamn exciting. It's so motivating. Like, you just won't stop until you get there because it's so worth it. That's to me is the biggest thing, is build out exactly. I can tell you exactly we went over it. My week is, Friday at noon to Monday at noon, I'm off doing things that I want to do in the wilderness, or exploring, or in a new city, or doing whatever. Come Wednesday or Monday at noon, I'm catching up. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm doing, I'm doing all my podcasting, doing all my outreach, my consulting, my mastermind groups. And then come Friday afternoon or Friday morning, I tighten everything up, and then I go out and explore. And that's our ideal day, our ideal week. And getting there was just as much fun as actually doing it. Now all I need is a van like yours. Yeah. So that's the next step.
I think you nailed it right on the head there, because the getting there is so much fun. Once you get into the routine, or once you figure out what you're going to do on a regular basis, I think that's kind of hard for people. Like, well, if I'm going to be doing some sort of business or whatever it may be, or even like trying to take what you're doing in your job to get it towards, living in a van or whatever, traveling around, that process of figuring it out and, putting the blocks on top of each other is so cool that I'm the same way with you. Like, I have another business that's like kind of there, and I maintain it at this point, and it's cool, but it was so much more fun when I was like building up to the point of like, oh yeah, I want to, build up to having $4,000 or $5,000 a month that just comes in every month. Cool.
Yeah.
And now that it does, it's we can keep on building it, and then we still have more goals, but it's more like, what's the next thing I can build, because that's so much fun.
Yeah.
So much
fun. It's awesome, man. And and just knowing like that's what you want, with your week, like you just become so motivated because it's so intrinsically, it's like, it's exactly what you want. So how could you not be motivated and excited to go chase it that day? Yeah. It's cool, man. And I'm happy to hear that you got there too. And that you continued on the journey, because you know what, like what my perfect week was 2 years ago is not what it is today.
Oh yeah.
And, ultimately the perfect day exercise, which is, what it came down to, is what ultimately made me sell my gym. It's like, okay, my perfect day is no longer involves walking into a gym and dealing with, gym stuff, Right. It doesn't. And when I came to that realization, I was like, okay, well, what does it look like? And that's, I branched it out and redid it. And by maybe, for 2 years from now, maybe 6 months from now, that will be different too. Maybe I'll come across something else that I find that I really love and enjoy, and that I want to be part of my life, and I'll go after that.
Yeah. And that was something that I was just thinking about as you said it, is that it's okay if you don't have to predict 10 years down the road, like I'm living in a van right now, and maybe in a year from now, I won't want to be living in a van. Maybe I want to go back to the city, and that's totally fine. But what are you super passionate about doing right now?
Yeah. 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 It's great because it will change. You change, like I said, when I first opened the gym in 2009, if I had fast forwarded and I knew what was coming in 2017, Eric in 2009 would have been like, yes, that is perfect. That's exactly what I want. Right. Yep. Home in Santa Barbara, beautiful wife, like all these things. But then when I got to that point, I was like, God, inside, it's just not what I want. And I think that's a big thing, is understanding, like, don't judge yourself on the fact that you will change over time, and that what you want and desire and what fulfills you will change too, because that's just part of life. You just mature, or not, lack of a better term, mature, but just shift with times,
Yeah. And when you're doing your perfect week, do you have like a routine that you go through?
When creating it in my mind's eye.
Is it in your mind? Is it written down? What is that?
It's in my mind, but probably writing it down, now I think about it, would be a much more powerful thing, because once you write things down, it's, write things down, then tell somebody or multiple people, because then it's real. That shit gets real, right? Because once other people know, be like, hey, boom, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm going to look like in a year. And you tell people that, and once you share it. Yeah, I think writing down would be actually a great addition to that exercise. I haven't I haven't actually done it, but maybe I'll make my clients do it.
Yeah, I've been playing around with something called the 12-week year, and there's like
Awesome.
a weekly planning thing.
Okay.
That I'm trying to get down as well. I feel like sometimes when you're an entrepreneur, there are a lot of different things, and you have your week scheduled and whatnot, and it's hard to really step back and plan. But I think that if somebody is not in that place right now, that they don't really know what direction or how they're going to get to where they want to, that's planning thing can be really, really powerful. So
yeah, I agree. And it's tough. I think there's a certain amount of planning, but as you kind of start the process, like it never really goes the way you think it's going to go. Nope. You think you have this great service, an entrepreneur that everyone's going to love. And you find out it's just you loving your own cooking. And no one really likes it, and they're like, oh, so the market will dictate a lot of things too. But I think the one thing is for sure, is that you got to like the process, and you got to be ready for change and failure and learning. That's the one consistent thing that I've seen over the years for sure. Is that things will change. You just got to expect it.
Yep, absolutely. And that leads us perfectly into this second to the last part of the podcast here. Do you have any books or podcasts that you would recommend to people? I always love asking this question. I'm a crazy reader, love reading. So what do you got?
Oh yeah. I got so much. So I ask this question all the time too. My short form podcast, the Fitness Blitz, it's one of the core questions because I'm so curious because it tells so much about people, right? And I do read a lot. I read at least, I try to read a book a week. I just started with Blinkist. I don't know if you know that application, but it just gives you like 2 summaries of a book every morning. So in like 30 minutes, I just get like just information upon information. It's kind of like the cliff notes that'll make me find out what I want to read next. But, can
I stop you right there really quick?
Yeah.
So do you use Blinkist and then read the book, or does Blinkist take over for the book?
Both. It depends on what I get from Blinkist. If I'm like, okay, this one really resonated with me, then I'll get the full audio or the full book and I'll go down that route, So I use it both, but I like, in the mornings I've committed to at least 30 minutes of no email, no social, no nothing. So, I do my 5-minute flow from Max Chank, if you know that guy. And then I drink my water, I make my bulletproof coffee, and then I start listening to something or reading something. So I use Blinkist now because it's just it's like, okay, it gives me ideas for maybe my long, because on the weekends I'll read books. I'll go out when we do stuff, I'll read books. But, I'm reminded, since I asked, so many people the same question of like all these great books. And so it's tough to say, but I can tell one that keeps coming back to me as of recently is the one, it's called The One Thing. Mm-hmm. If you know that book. And the reason being is like,
is that right?
It's a great book. The One Thing, and it's short. But I can tell you the reason why I say it found me. All great books find you at a certain point in your life, right? And at this point in time, I was just like, I think it was 2016. I was talked to James Fitzgerald, and he pointed out, because I was at that time, I was running my gym, I was doing online coaching, I was starting a consulting business for gyms, I was doing a corporate wellness program that was very time demanding. So I had all these things going on. Right. And he's just like, well, when are you just going to get like really good at one thing? And I was like, what is that? That's not what entrepreneurs do. Right. And then I also happened to just be finishing that book at the same time. And boom, dude, it nailed me, and everything became clear. Like, what do I really want to be doing? What do I'm good at? And, although I still have multiple things, it really comes down to, raising up to whatever my core competency is, or my, my zone of genius. And what I realized that is just communicating with people and building networks, like doing this. I love podcasting, I love talking to mastermind groups. I love just helping, right? Finding different ways to help. So that's really kind of what I've branched out. And then now I'm finding ways to amplify it. But that's one book. Another book that I always come back to every once in a while, and like that guy, we keep talking about, but Di Manuel reminded me of it, was The Alchemist. Mm-hmm. If you ever read that one, I try to throw in fiction every now and then, but this book is like, man, it was gifted to me when I was like 22. It was one of the first books I've ever read, and cover to cover, because I didn't read much early on. And yeah, I just keep coming back to it, and it's awesome. It's such a good book. It'll, everything we're talking about today with life. You read that book, and it will resonate for sure.
Very cool. Very cool. If somebody's looking to take action, would the books be the same, or would they change?
Take action
on like finding something that we've talked about. Let's say maybe it's entrepreneurship. We both have podcasts. Maybe it's starting a CrossFit gym.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but
yeah, I have to say, I think the one person who motivates me to take action, like if I'm feeling like, maybe I'm just not having it that day, or maybe I'm finding reasons or excuses to go off and do something else. I listen to some Gary Vee. Yep. And dude, the guy is just so laser point on focus. I mean, if you haven't read Crushing It, or that's like that was the first one, right? Then he just came out with a new one.
So I think it was Crush It, and then
right. Now it's Crushing It.
Crushing It, the second one.
Yeah. So either one, whatever, they're both great. Yeah. I mean, once you hear Gary Vee, you understand his energy and his enthusiasm. And, now I'm not saying like, and he's very clear about it too. Like you don't need to be, not everyone should be working 20-hour days, right? You shouldn't, because there's health concerns when it comes down to that. But, if you're looking for something to really fire you up, understand like how important it is nowadays for you and the opportunities that are out there, especially if you start getting down to like, okay, what's my perfect week? What's the 12-week planner? What is it that I really want out of my life? He really, really motivates you to think that anything is possible, and that, the opportunities for you are endless in this modern day space. So I would say, yeah, man, he gets me going all the time, in his podcasts, his books. I mean, he's everywhere. He's the king of content. The guy's omnipresent. And so I would recommend that guy. Yeah. Go get something. He fires me. I'm just even thinking about him right now. I'm like, I need to go do some shit, right? Like I need to go create some content. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. He's the best.
It's so good. Well, we're creating content right now, so we're doing some shit. It's awesome.
Yeah, we are.
We're that.
Definitely doing some shit. Yeah.
Well, Eric has been so awesome. What would you like to promote? Tell people how they can find you, if they're into what you've been talking about, how can they find that? Go.
Yeah. I think, the big focus for us right now, I'm all over social. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook primarily, if you want to find me at Eric Malzone. What we're really working on right now is fitnessprofessionalonline.com. So my business partner, Doug, has owned that website for some time now. And, we do have a mission with that. We want to make an impact. So we just redid the website. We gutted it, put a lot of money into it, making it look better and feel better. But our goal for that is to be a leading resource for online fitness professionals and achieving, and breaking through to a life of freedom. And, so we want to have as many resources as we can, from, education on how to coach people properly, everything that comes from that end, the business side of things, the marketing side of things. And we're also looking for really good contributors. So if people want to get themselves exposed, with a traffic that's going to be gaining a website that's going to be getting a lot of traffic, we're looking for good partners there too. So if you want to get in the ground floor and something that's going to be really, really cool, go look at fitnessprofessionalonline.com and just contact me via social, anywhere. You can also find me at Eric Malzone at fitnessprofessionalonline.com.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Eric, this was awesome.
Yeah, it was fun, man. Thank you.
Love talking with you. I look forward to talking to you again in the future. And man, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I appreciate your time, man. This was great.
I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon.
You too.
That was my podcast with Eric Malzone from the Fitness Bliss Radio on iTunes and all of the other podcast channels. So make sure that you check him out. He's got all kinds of great information in the fitness industry, and actually the fitness business industry as well. As you could tell, I hope you really enjoyed that show, or at least enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed it. And if you would like to pick up a free book on us, you can do so at Audible by going to allaroundjoe.com/audible and getting yourself that free audiobook download. I listen to audiobooks all the time, and as you can see on the show, Eric does as well. I would recommend picking up The One Thing by Gary Keller. and figuring out what that one thing is for you. And if you guys have any questions or comments about the podcast, I love to hear about them. You can find the show notes and comment or leave your question at allaroundjoe.com/143. That's allaroundjoe.com/143. So I hope you pick up a free audiobook, and I hope that you leave a question or a comment over on the show notes, and check out Eric's show, the Fitness Blitz Radio. The All Around Joe podcast, where we optimize your human performance from my personal experience as an athlete, coach, and all-around self-improvement junkie. I will see you on the next